The reading this morning is taken from John chapter 4, verses 4 to 29. And it can be found on page 1066 in the Pew Bibles. Now he had to go through Samaria, so he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about the 6th hour. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews do not associate with the Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," said the woman, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his flocks and herds?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give him will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I can get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water, so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." He told her, "Go, call your husband and come back." "I have no husband," she replied. Jesus said to her, "You are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you've had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true." "Sir," the woman said, "I can see that you're a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem." Jesus declared, "Believe me, woman, a time is coming when you will worship with the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming, and has now come, when the true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for they are the kind of worshippers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshippers must worship in spirit and in truth." The woman said, "I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us." Then Jesus declared, "I who speak to you am he." Just then his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman. But no one asked, "What do you want?" or "Why are you talking with her?" Then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Christ?" This is the word of the Lord.
Good morning, everyone. Wash your hands with soap and water often. Do this for at least 20 seconds. Always wash your hands when you get home or into work. The advice from the NHS in the current crisis makes Jesus' comments about life-giving water seem very appropriate. If you want to stay safe, washing your hands in clean running water is still the best advice. Water is for cleansing. Water's for refreshment. Water is essential for a healthy body and mind. Once again, the Bible takes us aback with its surprising relevance in whatever situation we find ourselves in. But I'd like to take you back, in imagination at least, far from our current problems, back 2,000 years, to the well outside the Samaritan town of Sychar, Jacob's well, where the Old Testament patriarch Jacob had met Rachel, the love of his life. It would, I think, have just been a deep hole in the ground, perhaps with a wooden tripod construction, and a goat skin on the end of a length of rope with which to draw up water. Jesus and his band of disciples were travelling from Jerusalem in the south towards Galilee, on foot, of course. They could have taken the longer route up the Jordan Valley, as most travellers did, but they'd taken the shorter, hilly route through Samaritan territory. The countryside was arid and hot in the summer, and it was midday when the group arrived at the edge of the town. The disciples left Jesus resting by the well while they went into town to see if they could buy something to eat for lunch. Jesus was still sitting by the well when a woman arrived to draw water. I can hardly over-exaggerate how shocking their encounter was. It broke all the expected taboos. Samaritans were absolutely despised by Jews, who regarded them as a kind of mongrel race, partly Jewish, partly infidel, who'd corrupted true worship and built their own temple. There'd been bad blood between the two peoples for centuries. They would not eat or drink together, and the very thought of sharing a cup with a Samaritan would make a pious Jew shudder. Moreover, Jewish holy men, rabbis, teachers, would at all times avoid being alone with a woman. If it was unavoidable, they would certainly avoid talking to her for fear of gossip or being led into impurity. Despite all this, Jesus spoke to the Samaritan woman and asked her to give him a drink of water, presumably out of the water pot she was carrying. If the woman was surprised that Jesus spoke to her, the disciples were amazed when they returned. Jesus' simple request cut through ingrained reserve and suspicion in the simplest of ways. Now, this is a well-known story, frequently the subject of sermons. Usually, the preacher characterises the Samaritan woman as no better than she ought to be, a rather disreputable character with a history of several marriages and currently living with a man who's not her husband. It's often suggested that she'd come to collect water during the heat of the day to avoid catty comments from the more respectable women who would have collected water for their households before breakfast. I can see why people think that, but I don't buy into it. And I'll tell you why. Women were very much second-class citizens in those days. One law for men, another for women. You'll recall the woman caught in the act of adultery who was going to be stoned to death. There's no sense that the man involved was going to be stoned. Similarly, if a man's wife displeased him, he could simply write a bill of divorce to rid himself of her. There were certain qualifications to this, but basically, a man could divorce his wife at will. It certainly didn't apply the other way round. A woman would not be able to divorce her husband under any circumstances. It was one-way traffic. So, it seems pretty unlikely, in my opinion, that the Samaritan woman has had more than her share of husbands because she was fast and flirtatious. If she was a serial adulteress, she would have been stoned to death. More likely, she has been rejected by several husbands. Why? Why might that happen? It must have been something pretty serious. Infertility, perhaps, or some hidden physical abnormality. Perhaps a horrific childbirth event that had left her damaged. The other possibility, of course, is that she'd been widowed in a numbing series of unfortunate bereavements. Maybe the other women regarded her as somehow unclean, bad luck, a woman with a curse on her. Anyway, Jesus asked this woman for a drink of water, and when she expressed her surprise, Jesus told her that if she knew who she was talking to, she would have been asking him for living water. Jesus was using a phrase that meant running water, flowing water, a phrase you would use for a river, a fountain, or a spring. Wholesome, life-giving water, as opposed to potentially stagnant water that you might find in a pond or cistern or horse trough. Gradually, as the conversation developed, Jesus spoke into her place of need. Despite her evasions, something stirred in her soul. Perhaps she was only too aware of her need for cleansing and wholeness. And when Jesus told her in answer to her query about the Messiah, "I am he," using the "I am," the name of God, she left her water pot and the remains of her pride to go and alert the townsfolk to their extraordinary visitor. We don't hear anything else about the woman. We don't even know her name. But one senses this was a conversation that changed her life. Did she come to know for herself what it was to drink the living water that Jesus offers? We simply don't know. And 2,000 years on, it scarcely matters anyway. What matters now is whether we want to receive that living water and to know for ourselves that spring of water gushing up to eternal life. When we allow Jesus to get rid of the stale, stagnant, putrid water that had been there before, and in its place pour his life-giving water, the Spirit, then we find wholeness and joy, even in the desert places of our lives. Where there is shame, Jesus affirms our dignity. Where we are tired of our old selves, Jesus offers a clean, fresh start. Where earthly relationships suck us dry, he gives a new kind of relationship with himself. Human relations can let you down, as the Samaritan woman knew only too well. But a relationship with Christ will never disappoint, and that's the truth. This story challenges us to be not only those who receive what Jesus offers, but also to be those who reach out across the barriers of reserve and suspicion and prejudice, as Jesus did, with words of life. Our lives are full of surprising opportunities to share our faith, if only we will take them. Right now, we are surrounded by lots of worried, frightened people. They need words of courage and strength. Of course, faith in Jesus will not stop us getting the coronavirus. But those who drink the living water that Jesus gives know his strength and power and comforting presence with them, even in the grimmest of situations. The fields are ripe for harvest, but the labourers are few, Jesus told his disciples later that same day. We need to drink the living water ourselves, and then, refreshed and ready, to take our place in the harvest fields of God's kingdom. Let's not wait for the next crisis. Let's be doing it now. Amen.